Hello, everybody. This is Sangeetha Rajkumar. I'm a senior TPM at Microsoft. So, today I'm going to present the talk on urgent cloud deployments. I think we've dealt with this as an SRE in our past. What happens during an urgent cloud deployments? Like, if my service needs an immediate urgent fix, what am I supposed to do? I'm going to provide some of the details, insights, and we'll go a little bit deeper on what constitutes as urgent deployments, different types of urgent deployments, and we'll delve more on how AI can help this as well. Great. So this is about me. So I'm Sangeetha Rajkumar, as I said. I have 9+ years of work experience in IT world. I think myself more of an enabler for product development, building in new innovations. I'm more well versed in bringing in 0 to 1 product and scaling them out from 1 to N. Currently at Microsoft, I play a very key role in the space of cloud, Azure, building a large-scale infrastructure products. I hold a master's degree from Cornell University with my product management as specialization. Previously, I worked in different industries, consulting, fintech, and enterprise organization. Additionally, I do mentor a lot of early in career professionals, especially fresh out of graduates, anybody looking for job in various of this platform. You can find me and happy to share my learnings. Then, last but not the least, I'm a nature lover from Seattle. I do a lot of hikes, especially the sunny days like this. And I'm a great cook, according to my friends. And I do something called as forest bathing. Let's chat about that after this talk. That can be one of the questions as well. Okay, let's get into the main topic, urgent rollout. What happens during urgent rollouts? If systems are not automated, everything is in chaos, everything is burning up, everything is a priority issue. How do we deal with it? As SpongeBob is running around all over, there is fires everywhere. How do I put this down? Right? Ultimately, it's chaos everywhere. So how do we deal with this, right? Let's start addressing on the definition of a word, what an urgent rollout is. Urgent rollout is something for your software updates. Let's say you need a quick, simple implementation for updating without delaying your service availability to the customers. Main point during the urgent rollout is minimizing the customer downtime, right? That's the key, right? So that the business is running uninterrupted. Why are urgent rollouts hard? I'm from the deployment space, so especially from building deployment products angle, I've curated some of my learnings on like the urgent rollouts, right? Why is it hard? Let's say if your IT infrastructure is not built in an automated manner to take in the swift, quick request, such as emergency deployments, you're going to scrap all your resources which you have, right? You're going to call your senior engineer, principal engineer. You're trying to build a team in a minute and ask them to put together something as a quick patch or a fix, right? So that is very hard on the teams. You're not, that brings a lot of constraints to the resources. And if, say, your deployments are manual, meaning you have to perform certain action in the back end, right? That requires series of steps. Series of steps include series of quick decision making in order to see what needs to be performed at which angle. Then, more importantly, it's going to disrupt your service, right? If the steps are not performed right because of the manual prone error, you are going to impact your SLIs and SLOs. I hope you know what SLI and SLO is. And overall, if you are from a very big cloud provider, the scale, or even a small cloud provider, scale matters, right? The scale at which you are deploying matters. And you need to deploy during various hardwares, various workloads, keeping the customer preference in mind. So all these things just makes things harder. But what is constant? Time. Time is running out. We are trying to deploy something quick, but all these things just makes it harder, right? How do we deal with it, right? So that's where we will, at the end of the talk, I'll give you more of the key learnings and how to go about it. But let's talk about what are the common scenarios for urgent rollouts, right? Curated mostly the comprehensive list on what constitutes as an urgent rollout for your organization. Some of the key scenarios such as system downtime, right? Let's say one of your key service is not performing at its max level and it's completely down, right? This affects the business operation. Let's take networking for an example. Say a critical component in networking is failing. None of the systems are able to talk to each other, right? That's one of the key system outage failure for your business. Then second type of urgent rollout is the security breach, right? Which occurs more common than often. With respect to security breaches, it can be any sort of attack such as DDoS attack, SQL injection attack, code injection attack, water hole attack, like you name it, there is already a attack for that. So if there is any vulnerable code sitting in your code base, you need to be very wary about what's going in, what's going out, especially for security breaches. You need to be very careful. This is one of the main candidates for emergency deployments. Third bucket is the compliance updates. Any time the regulatory changes can occur, and if your code base requires those updates, you are supposed to complete it within a certain time. We all know FedRAMP compliance. Then going back to the systems, another key feature is the rollbacks. Let's say you have completed a particular deployment, but then there is some sort of an uninterrupted, unexpected issue which you have found out, and now you have to urgently roll it back, right? Something is not working. You can evidently see it because of your new deployment. How do you go in rollback? This also constitutes as an emergency or an urgent rollout, right? And last but not the least, the disaster recovery. None of us want to bring out any sort of region or a cloud data center down with the service level failures. So these are the common scenarios of what I would call it as an urgent rollout. Let's take one of the use cases as security rollout use cases. Let's say you are using a AMD or an Intel chip, and then I hope everybody knows what a CVE is. Let me give an explanation of what a CVE is. CVE is a corporate vulnerability disclosure. I hope I got it right. So this particular the CVE helps us understand what is the vulnerability present in the system. And there's a whole set of database managed by US Department of Homeland Security. So we need to adhere. If there is a particular CVE and it's affecting your system, you need to get the security fix patched before the deadline date of CVE. Let's say a security researcher comes in your organization and says that, hey, particular chip is having a security vulnerability and the provider has given us a fix. Great. But the point is, it's just 15 days to patch this particular CVE. Now, your developer is going to have to scramble through, understand what is the information in the CVE, what's the security vulnerability, have to come up with a code fix. And let's say you have a traditional IT deployment. God knows how long will it take to deploy the service. And let's say one of two things happen, like customer is not able to patch. That means you have a heavy penalty that you need to pay in terms of what legal fee. And also the customer loses the trust at your company, or worst in case, the entire system comes crashing down, and that's why the crying customer face. So these are all some of the risks that one need to adhere during the security rollout scenario. Now, how do we tackle about this? Traditionally, the IT systems have been very manual. Like you have a series of standard operating procedures. You write what are the steps that one needs to perform, and that's just going to increase more of a human error and inefficiency in the process. Also, the longer deployment times. For example, if your customer is in, let's say, a maintenance, that means, let's say, a bank, you need to wait for a specific business operations hour to execute your deployment. Then you have downtime risks, such as scheduled maintenance. if you're having a legacy or financial systems interrupting your service interruptions. Then you have the data migration, lower back complexities, and ultimately the stakeholder management. If you do not have a right communication between all the teams, there is going to be delay in deployments. So these are all some of the key problem statements. We're still in the problem statement space. These are all the key problem statements which occur in the case of an urgent deployment. Now we'll move into the solution phase. For solutions, right? Now we understand what are the different types of urgent rollouts, why urgent rollouts are hard with respect to your organization, what are the common scenarios of urgent rollouts, and using traditional IT management, how urgent rollout can really suck. So now we'll get into the solutions part of it, right? In the solutions part, let's say your organization is not fully automated yet, right? We can start with something called as an deployment playbook, urgent deployment playbook. So here, there is series of steps which I've outlined, which are absolutely necessary. There can be more steps given a particular product that you're working on, right? Firstly, you need to identify there is a need of a security rollout or an emergency rollout, right? You need to firstly define what is the criteria for these sort of emergency and emergency rollouts. Like this bar needs to be really high. Otherwise, you will have other service rollouts coming in and sneaking in and misusing your urgent rollout protocols. So the bar of identification of what an urgent rollout is supposed to be really high. So that's something you're going to discuss this with your stakeholders, then come up with the eligibility criteria, if you will. Second step is defining the roles and responsibilities. This is, remind you again, this is still a playbook, right? Your company is not ready for a full automation yet. So this is a stepping stone for it. For roles and responsibilities, you need to define each of the personas involved in your emergency rollout. If you have a decision maker who's going to give a go, no-go deployment decision, you need to keep them informed. You need to keep them abreast as a decision-making persona. If a developer is going to complete the fix, you're going to keep them as the responder category. Then you'll have to keep security guys and the customers involved as well. So you'll have to keep them in the informed category. So these are all the roles and responsibilities you might want to define very early on, not at the time of emergency, but well in advance. Then you're going to draw a communication plan. Whenever there is an urgent rollout, it's important for your internal stakeholders. And if you want to explain this to your customers based on your business preferences, business conditions, that you need to keep them informed with your notifications and protocols that you're running behind the screen. Then we'll go into the response procedures. You'll have to take a series of step-by-step action. Let's say you are going through a security breach. One of the key steps will be, I'll tackle the affected resources first, and then I'll go to the rest of the resources. Similarly, in the case of outage, right, I want to do this mitigation first before I release the final fix. So these are some of the emergent response protocols which you will have to write down in your steps. And then you will have to continue recovering your workloads, continue recovering your resources for the business continuity purposes. And then finally, you will sit down in a retrospective meeting to collect all the documentation and ensure that if a need arises such as this, what are the best key learnings we can take and improve our systems. Hopefully, at the end of retrospective, you decide to actually invest in emergency rollout automation. Let's say the playbook is done, but now you're ready to actually automate your system, right? So with respect to your automation, I would say firstly, the deployments and the updates needs to be very streamlined for your services. So in that step, I would say, of course, everybody of us will follow the standard deployment practices, but at what cost? We need to deploy this in faster manner with keeping security and keeping safety in mind. So we will have to do the rolling deployments in a reduced STP stage manner, can be something that you can consider. and ensure your rollouts are elevated, right? For example, you have a software update that needs to go first. That means that's particular build version would be given a priority than any other build which is requiring for a maintenance or a regular rollout. Then you can incorporate the strategies such as evacuating the node or utilizing the live migrations technologies for resources to perform while you're doing a actual fix, right? So these are some of those strategies you can imply. Then we need to obviously keep in mind of high availability and fault tolerance in the basic cloud principles while developing this, streamlining this update process. So that's what I would say, that's the key, the crux of it. Then we have the telemetry and reduction of manual processes, because as an automated system which we're trying to build, we want to ensure like the manual touches are completely reduced. Let's say you need a customer permission for updates, have those sort of contracts defined, have those SLAs defined in terms of when this security rollouts can go through. Then for the timely implementation, I would highly say that in your organization, if there is an emergency rollout, please try to have awareness within your organization that this is an emergency rollout. Have some sort of a banner or a communication sent out to the organization, whoever are the stakeholders involved, so that they are aware that this is the important rollout that needs to go out, and have the real-time telemetry and monitoring. And don't forget to close your security ticket or your incident which has been opened during this emergency rollout. So that's the main solution I would like to propose. Apart from this, right, I want to go a little bit deeper into the key practices as for urgent cloud rollouts. Is definitely having an implementation of CDCI pipelines for automated deployments, then utilizing the code for all your consistent environments. Let's say your code is there in different clouds. Some of them are in public, some of them are private. Whatever the solutions you're going to bring, make sure the solutions are consistent across the environments. And regularly scan your fleet, regularly scan your resources for security audits. Vulnerability assessment is a key practice that we all should be responsible for. And now I want to open up the floor to talk about how AI can help with urgent updates. This is something I've thought deeply into AI-driven update management, especially with respect to predictive analytics, right? Let's say there is a CVE that has been disclosed. If we have an AI system which can easily identify that CVE before even a security researcher can come and tell, hey, there is a vulnerable code inside your organization. So if AI can come and talk to us or predict with respect to these updates, then we will be in a very much effective planning. Then advanced threat detection is something that AI can help with. And especially with respect to updates, let's say for a financial organization, I'll take an example, not an airlines organization, you're running their workloads. So you know based on their region, what is their schedule. So based on the customer business activity, you can run the updates behind the screen and not impacting the customer, keeping the systems highly available. And you can also do a proactive response strategy. As I've been mentioning, prevention is the key for such as the emergency such as critical security rollouts. And AI can also utilize the user feedback and especially in the incident management. It can go over, scrape the contents using the large language model processing and try to learn and lead the code fixes, right? So it's something that we can invest on as well. So this is all the future things that AI can help, especially with the deployments and urgent update practices. And finally, the takeaways are, if you know there is a CVE or if you know there is some sort of a security vulnerability that exists, act fast, right? Don't wait. Have an effective planning to reduce the operational disruptions, especially if it's related to a CVE-based security risk. And continuously monitor your fleet for threat detection, security readiness. and invest in cloud automation because that's what is going to get us ahead, and perform emergency drills. This is something that we don't talk often. We have developed the end-to-end automated solution, but if we say we are going to just utilize it when the emergency comes, you never know if there is any code because of the new releases. You never know if there is any code fix. Let's say orchestration step might get misinterpreted, like orchestration service would have released a new product. So that's why perform the emergency drill in a cadence manner so that you can identify these platform issues at then and there before an emergency hits you. So perform the emergency drill and finally stay calm and execute your emergency rollout. So this was my talk. Thank you so much. And
First question. Thank you very much for sharing. I have a question. You emphasized on emergency or urgent deployments. How you differentiate from the infrastructure and process perspective regular deployments from emergency or urgent one?
hello?
1, 2, 3.
Yes,
It works.
it works. Great. So how do you differentiate between an emergency rollout and a regular rollout? That's where you need to start with the eligibility criteria. So within your organization, you will have something called as an eligibility criteria for what constitutes as an emergency rollout. So that is the first step. Apart from that, you need to pass in the metadata for your systems to understand, hey, this is an emergency rollout. So you need to act this way instead of just doing a regular orchestration. With the emergency metadata, you can say reduce the STP or go in an elevated manner, right? You can go as fast as possible, but also with safety measures. In regular rollouts, you want to wait for regular safe deployment practices and you want to go in a rolling basis. So these are the things that you can help system understand by going to first defining the eligibility criteria on what constitutes as urgent deployments for your infrastructure, and then going deep into providing the metadata based on if a rollout is a particular critical rollout or an emergency rollout. That's what I would say.
All right, next question.
Hi, really quick. You stated how you work on the actual productivity side, but how do you make sure that at the same time on the people side that your stakeholders that want the product to be launched fast, but then you're trying to actually make sure your team is okay? Like, how do you balance both of those things?
That's why we need to start firstly investing in automation. That's where I told my majority of the crux with respect to automation. We want to make systems do work with respect to whenever there is an emergency sort of release, so that the people angle are kept aside, right? So folks, developers can actually look at the code and fix it and start releasing. During the release process, that's when we need to give control for the deployment systems to have fully automation in place. That's my take for the people angle question.
Yeah. Actually, you called out risks using the SOP, right? So I just want to, that's always a problem when we are managing a team and there are like 30 different people and they read the things differently and then they'll execute the things differently, right? So what AI can help in that, or how we can remove that gap, and how can I convert that SOP thing directly into AI or a automated flow, or so how I need to think or how I need to prepare or plan. Any input or guidance really helps.
For sure. Very good question, I would say. With respect to AI, AI can scan all of the emergency rollouts which you have done in the past. Let's say it's been manual. Your question, I'm assuming it's manual. So it can scrape all the information and it can provide in a clear, consistent steps what I mentioned in the emergency playbook, right? A playbook can be written by a human or it can be written by an AI given the AI capabilities that are present here. So that's my first take. And then let's say with the advancements such as agentic AI coming into place, right? Each of these steps, if you can make it agentified for the emergency rollouts, you can keep that. But let's not forget, with the agentic AI, you're trying to deploy something in a very large scale. Let's say if something goes back, so that's where you will need humans in loop for the question asked I want to tie the question back to the previous question. So you need to have humans in loop to validate at each of the step, right? Because you're going to be disrupting the entire ecosystem if you're not keeping the deployments in place. Let's say it's majorly affecting your SLIs. That's where you will have to keep in humans in loop to have a check. But also AI can help with respect to a lot of these different steps, automation, and it can execute if a particular CV is present at this time, right, at this stage of this component of your code. It can start producing the code snippets that can help with respect to the security vulnerability. Then a developer can take a look at it and can go deep and release the deployments. So that's one of the other ways that agentic AI can help. Yes, you can have
One last.
constraints. Yes.
The main thing was that you could actually do it by region. So that way the blast area is contained to a region, and you can basically take the region out. So you can basically apply patches and then basically put the region back in once it's basically good.
Yes.
Very much for the presentation. And am I closer? Is it close enough? Okay, good. I might have missed it. I'm just curious. Could it be a situation when actually the urgent rollout cause more problems with the system? And do we have to think about it, right? That like rollout by this itself is a disruption, right, to the system. And do you have any procedure how to revert it back to the state? Because something changed, right? You roll out on system and already new state and already produced something, generated something content, right? And you need to go back and
So that's where the deployment practices comes into picture. You're going to be releasing slowly, not blasting off, right? You're going to start with a particular region. You can do a blue-green deployment or canary level deployment
on scale, yes.
before releasing out the scale. And that's where I highly recommend practicing the safe deployment practices. That's when you can detect the things early. And in the case of emergency rollouts, you might want to still consider the safety procedures, probably in a reduced time frame manner. So these are the things that you might want to keep while performing the emergency rollouts.